Hello everyone, and welcome to the September 2022 Diorama Challenge build video. God, it's been a while. Obviously I've not played dioramas probably since January, I think was the last one. And I've not played with mods since last year, about a year ago now. So it's been a while. And I thought we'll give this one a go. It's the first sort of one with building a mod that I've done before. As you can see, it's an RMC coaster, an RMC hybrid, which I've not built before in the game either. I'm not going to be building one now, obviously it's built for us, but I've not tried to theme one before, so I think it's going to be really interesting to give this challenge a go. And it takes a break from the campaign playthroughs as well on the channel. So the rules for this one basically just don't move the park entrance, no changes to the layout. The ride entrance and exit can be moved, and public mods only can be used. So I think they say that to stop people using Freedom 2K, basically. And yeah, that's the map. As you can see, it's quite a big layout, quite a big map actually, quite long and sprawling. Fairly standard layout for these coasters, I guess. They've all got very different, well, they've all got similar elements, but they've all got quite different layouts, the ones in real life. But they're very, very popular coaster type, especially with enthusiasts. And yeah, I can't wait to start theming this up and see what we can do with it. So catch you all over in the build. Let's go. Welcome to the build then, and just to start with straight away there, I changed the colours to standard RMC colour just so we've got something to work with. It's a bit easier to look at than the white. And now you can see, what's this? We're turning stuff around, that's not allowed, is it? Surely not. It's a new mod that I'm sure you'll all know about if you play the game, if you play with mods, called Rotation Anarchy. It's available on the workshop, and it basically does the same thing that Freedom 2K used to do. I find it a little bit easier to use, although I really struggled at the start here using it, because I was absolutely pants with Freedom 2K. I just couldn't get my head around it. Throughout this build I've sort of learned how Rotation Anarchy works, how it likes to do things, and some of the really cool stuff that you can do with it. But we'll get more into that later. The theme that I'm sort of going for in this one is almost like set in the Victorian times, hence the name Victoria Valley. But we're basing it on architectural styles from Scotland, so Edinburgh and places like that. But it's very sort of vague frames of reference and a very vague theme. I kept changing my mind about the theme throughout the build. For a while I thought, oh, that looks more alpine, so I'm going to do an alpine build. And then I thought, no, I'm going to go back to my roots. I was thinking of sort of a rural like village, or you know, part of a town in Scotland where it rains a lot, and I wanted to go for that sort of darker look to the build. Of course it doesn't work quite as well because you have shadows and stuff. You can tell that, you know, it's sunny all the time in Parkitect, apart from when it does rain, but you can't make it rain all the time, and a build in the rain all the time probably wouldn't work anyway. I mean, maybe you can make it rain all the time, but I'm digressing a bit with that. So the first thing I really did was started building on this little town section with a few shops and houses and pubs and things like that, just to get the general idea of the build style. And get a bit of a feel for the Rotation Anarchy mod as well. In terms of mods that I'm using for this, it took me an hour just to get to the point where I could play with mods again, because I hadn't played that long with them. Terrible sentence, that I hadn't played with them for that long, that Parkitect was sort of rejecting my mods and crashing the game and not letting me build anything. It was really frustrating, so I had to play about a bit, and eventually I just narrowed it down so that I didn't have as many, because I used to have loads installed, and a lot of them I never really used, or just use one piece from. And obviously you can sort of use pieces from different sets and whatnot, so in the end I just decided we're going to narrow it down to about 10 mods that I'm definitely going to use in this build, and it made it a lot easier to work through the sort of build menu and, you know, choose the pieces that I actually needed. This build when I first looked at them I thought it's quite long and thin. It should be quite easy to theme, shouldn't take too long, doing it a couple of weeks hopefully. This is probably the single most mammoth build I've ever done. It took an insane amount of time. Fortunately we had a bit of extra time off here in the UK over the last few weeks, and I just sort of made the time to do this because I really wanted to finish it. To start with I was thinking, is this going to work? I'm not really sure, I'm not really feeling it. And then after a while I was like, I'm too far in now, there's no turning back, there's too much has been done, because it just takes 5 times longer playing with mods, especially with the Rotation Anarchy mod, because you're not just placing everything on a grid that it, you know, snaps to. You're trying to do that as much as possible still, but also give it that off-grid look that this mod is really brilliant for. And yeah, like I said, it's just so time consuming. A really overwhelming build. I did enjoy it, but there were times where I was just like, I want this to be over now. But the end result, yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's one of my favourite builds to date. But I think because of the mammoth task of doing this build, I will be laying off the dioramas for a while, or I might do a quick sort of vanilla one in a couple of months or something when I've got more time. I needed to get this done before October because I'm super busy in October. I've just found the time in my lunch break today, working from home, to record this commentary. But it's okay because at time of recording the results video isn't out yet anyway, so I won't upload till that's done. I played about with a bit of the pathing here because I wanted the guests to be able to walk, you know, over some of the park, even though I've not really put any guests in the park yet or attempted to. For some reason, I don't know if I'd done something wrong, but there didn't seem to be a depot rather in this one. So we don't have any shops or stalls or any other rides or anything like that. It is just basically, I would say this is just a diorama. It's more like a model than a theme park really by the time we're done with it. But I think the theme works really nicely with this coaster. As you can see, I've changed it to the purple style track like you have on Iron Gwazi. I think this suits the build quite well. Didn't take too long deciding on a colour, just went for that and stuck with it in the end. It works quite well with the actual buildings and the scenery. I should probably go back to talking about what we're doing here. Again, we're using some Rotation Anarchy, but we're just building some things in a straight line, sort of on grid, obviously using Construction Anarchy to get it out in the place that we need it, and just building up this sort of little high street type setup that we've got going on here. The total time lapse of this video was like 1 hour and 50 minutes in total, so I've majorly cut it down, so there will be parts of the build that you miss seeing me do. There'll be parts where I leave more in, parts where I cut more out, just to get the video down under 1 hour, which is still longer than I would rather it to have been, but that's, you know, that's as edited as I could get it really, without cutting too much out. So we've got 3 sort of main buildings in here. Obviously the path builds up around the buildings, going uphill and curving round in front of the track and then behind the buildings as well, and then we've got a sort of track in the middle doing all sorts of inversions and elements. It all blends together really well eventually, but at this point I was still thinking, is this going to work? How is this going to work? Help me. So yeah, it just took a lot of perseverance really, and a lot of breaks, you know, going back to it a few days later and trying again and whatnot. So here I wanted a really big curved wall, so I used the Rotation Anarchy dome trick, or the circular trick, whatever you want to call it, which is basically placing 2 opposite ends of the grid and blueprinting it round with one of the smaller grid settings for rotation anarchy on, so that it places one in sort of every part and it all joins together. You'll understand this if you play Planet Coaster. It's quite easy to do in Planet Coaster once someone first discovered it, and then we all started doing it. But it's very tricky in Parkitect, and I think the main difference that in Parkitect with rotation anarchy is that you need to basically make sure that the grids that it snaps to for the blueprinting system is in the middle of what you're trying to place things, so you can't just sort of place them anywhere, whereas Planet Coaster you can just sort of drag it wherever you want, so you have a bit more freedom there because you're not restricted to a grid. Although this is a good mod to place things off grid, you're still restricted if you want to do perfect circles to where you build them on the grid, but then you can move them afterwards, but it still has to be moved to another gridded position. It's really difficult to explain, but it's it caused me plenty of stress, so I felt I had to try and explain what I mean. But if you played with this mod before and you're already good with the mod, then you'll know what I mean. Or 3 and 2K as well work pretty much the same from what I remember. So going back to the town centre or the high street, whatever it is, we're building a pub type building here. This is in a theme park, I think, the reference image that I inspired this one from. Or is it the Bavarian Village? Might be the Bavarian Village in somewhere in the USA, I can't remember where that is. But strictly speaking, this isn't Scottish architecture. You'll see later on in the build more of the building types that I'm doing, such as a cathedral, are based on Scottish type architecture. But yeah, obviously you've probably seen me do this build style before. It works quite well for a number of things, like probably work for Viking or medieval and stuff like that, but I think it works for this town as well. In a way, like, I wish that I was more concise with what I was theming this build to, so that it would be easier to pigeonhole, but yeah, I think really it's just a nice scenic build, and the storyline or lore behind it probably shouldn't be looked into too much. I think when I submitted it as an entry to Coaster B, I come up with some stupid little story for the park, but just something that I thought off the top of my head after probably playing Parkitect for about 60 hours. Not all in one go, but yeah, it's just designed to look nice and not much else really. The coaster itself could be functionable if you take it out of Scenario Editor, make it into a park and let the guests in. They can access it and ride it, but because there's nothing else in the park, it would end up with really bad ratings, so it's definitely not a good park on a gameplay perspective like that. This building is taking really ages to put together, and there's not really that much else to say about it. Obviously I built the sort of structures, like the foundations for it there on the ground floor, and then built the upstairs so that I could see how it would look when it's finished, if that makes sense, and then I went back down to fill in the downstairs bit. I actually think this was meant to be maybe like an inn or something, like a small hotel building. I think that would look quite cool, but we do build another hotel building that's meant to be a hotel later in the build as well, that you'll see. And yeah, that's about it really. I don't know what else to say about this building. I don't know why I kept so much of this in, probably because it's one of my favourite ones, to be honest. What I've done as well, you see the building to the right of it's very basic, probably something that more likely see somewhere in Scotland, but I wanted to have some buildings have all the detailing and then some buildings be a bit more basic, so it wasn't too overwhelming with every single building being highly detailed and you don't know where to look, because this map is already pretty full on in that aspect. But I do try and keep some areas nice and green and open as well, with lots of foliage and stuff like that. So So yeah, I'm trying to put chimneys in all the buildings as well, or as many of them as possible, to make it look fairly realistic. I don't know why I kept this bit in, to be honest, building the back side of the building, because it's not that interesting to watch. So we're just going to skip a bit. So the next thing that we work on is pure torture, basically. Working out how to use rotation anarchy for some of these details on this next building was near on impossible. There's so much stuff that I had to just place randomly off grid to make it all work together. There's a lot of tearing my hair out. Basically, we need this archway piece to go over not only the coaster track, the station track where it comes in and out on the station, but also the sort of station flyby that it has next to it. So it has to be the exact right size. And what I did, I sort of measured it out with one piece either side, blueprinted it across to somewhere away from like this plain bit of grass so I could see what I was doing, and then worked out how to make the perfect dome there, the perfect archway there, and put it together this way. So the station building here, it's going to be like almost in a cathedral style. We've got two buildings in this style in the park. Although they're both quite different, they were both built with similar techniques. The second one I found a bit easier to build because I learned from my mistakes with the first one, and the second one gets built right near the end of the build. So yeah, the worst thing here was that I wanted to make these trims using rotation anarchy, like you see there. I've just stuck them all in, but getting the bits that then join together to make that straight sort of triangle spire thing that joins together in the middle, that all had to be done off grid, and that was all an absolute bugger to do. Similar to the windows on this building as well, which are very hard to do. A lot of pieces that we're using here then are just rotated as well. They're from the Parkitect pack, fancy fences, but just flipped on their side. Again, using RA to the best of for the best use of pieces, I guess. Building up these sort of side sections of the building, and yeah, it really is just a case of layering this up. It took absolutely ages to do, just like everything else in the park. But you'll see me putting in these sort of stained glass windows, almost like cathedral churchy windows, to this on the side, and that really was quite hard work because I had to make a line of shapes. It didn't work just putting one in because the blueprinting system likes to just chuck it off grids, onto a different grid piece. Sometimes even if you blueprinted it exactly on the one that you want it on. That's really hard to explain, but I know what I mean with it. But yeah, for this architectural style, I guess it is sort of loosely based on what I feel Edinburgh Cathedral looks like, and having a look at a few reference images. But do my own take on it as well, because I'm not trying to, carbon copy any real life buildings in this one. And yeah, a lot of adventure pieces flipped on this side as well for this, like you can see. We get this window in, that's not the one that's staying. I wasn't happy with that because that was just a few of the nice windows from the Yeehaw set put together. And it looks fine, but I wasn't happy with it. It wasn't quite doing it for me, and I wanted to give myself more pain by making it completely custom, which you'll see going in a little bit. Playing about here as well quite a lot with the roofing and just using the adventure wall but tilting it on its side to make a nice roof, and really just trying to join everything together and fill in any gaps that need filling in. And I'll tell you what, when you can work off grid like this, it does make things a fair bit easier because you're not sort of constrained to thinking I could use that piece, but it only places it in that way, and then just ending up using shapes for everything. At least with this I can use a few sort of different textures and stuff, and think, well, I couldn't normally use that, but I can do what I want now. I can place it anywhere, which is cool. As you can see, I put some chandeliers inside the station there. You can't actually see them. Of course, it's literally just for my own amusement, really, for my own knowledge that they're in there, I guess. Here's the part I was talking about with the windows now and having to get them in a certain way. It really frustrated me, this did. Because I had to build so much and then delete so much. But yeah, I think it was worth it because this window style looked really cool. And once I had it all in, I just stuck some mod fence pieces in there that basically looked a bit like a stained glass window type thing. But we're not using all the fancy colours for this one. Just a basic. Just keeping it basic, one colour for the frame and then some dark glass for the windows. And yeah, that's the completed thing, and it can just be blueprinted across, which is pretty much the same for all the rest of this building. A lot of blueprinting now, putting everything together like that. And that one archway took 3 hours, but the rest of the building probably took 2 hours. That's just how it is. Some pieces are more fiddly than others. And once you've got the bits you need, you can just copy everything across. And like you see, I've just blueprinted that whole section there to save myself a hell of a lot of work, placing everything individually. And then I end up doing some of the sort of path work and queue line stuff in front of the cathedral, which you'll see in just a minute. Just wanted to mention, I'm going to cut out the time, my commentary in a sec. These path tiles that I'm using, they are from a mod where you can place your own custom images in path tiles, but they're high quality images you can use now, so yeah, that works out really well. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'll catch you up towards the end of the video where we'll talk about sort of what we've done. So enjoy the rest of the build. So you can see I've built absolutely loads of stuff there, including the main cathedral, which I'm really happy with how that turned out. That's my favourite building in the park, the one near the back. I did keep that whole back section a bit more separate from the rest of this sort of town section, so that we've got more of a green area with foliage and you know, different sort of natural elements, which I thought was quite a good idea. And then you can see that I put this whole backdrop in. What I'd have rather had, to be honest, is a big custom image across the whole thing, but I couldn't find a way of making that work, so all I did in the end was just use some logs, some green wall pieces, some grey wall pieces to sort of show that it's a cloudy day and demonstrate sort of darker weather, and then put a load of bush, what would they be, like vines in the background to sort of show trees almost, so it's like a field and that's where it ends at the back, just really so that I didn't have to theme up the back of all these buildings, which were one tile wide, in order to fit them behind the coaster, because it would have just been too tight and it wouldn't have looked right. And I wanted people to view the map from this angle, like I mentioned before, so basically, yeah, those are the reasons that we've done that backdrop section, and it almost looks scenic, almost like a model railway or something once it's done. Bit of a crazy railway if you were to ride this train, but yeah, it's then that's it really. So we put in, like you can see, 2-3 more custom buildings at the back. What else have we done? We put in a hotel, we put in a toilet block, we put in some crazy bridges, and absolutely loads of, you know, scenic elements everywhere. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it come together in the end. I definitely think it was worth the effort that was put in. It's made me not want to play Parkitect for about 2 weeks since September ended, and I managed to finish this. I just needed a break from it after this, but we will be back soon playing probably a campaign map or something like that that's a little less challenging. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the build. Got some nice cinematic shots at the end for you, so enjoy those, and I will see you all over in the next one. Thanks for watching, bye bye.